Welcome along, one and all, to round 6 of season 8 of the APPF1 F2 Cup. We are here at F1 Mecca Silverstone, although, of course, running the reverse layout of the circuit for a bit of a twist for the drivers to put up with as we head into this first high pressure one shot qualifying session. So the time already ticking down. We're going to get right into it as we hit this one. So here we go for the run around the reverse Silverstone circuit. And we'll ride on board with Jack Olaco, who's proven to be a bit of a specialist around this track. First off, this horrible braking zone to open up the lap as you head backwards through Vale, getting onto that throttle pedal. We've already lost JB from the one-shot qualifying session, unfortunately, so hopefully he's going to be able to recover later on, but certainly work to do for him. Jack Olaco, though, heading out of Stowe, opening up that DRS somewhere mid-pack as he heads towards the middle sector of the track. Chapel now trying to flick that car in, very difficult to time your turn in for this corner, and then you try and keep it flat out all the way throughout the remainder of the Maggot to Beckett session, who've also lost canal flow from the session, who's also been going pretty well around this track. Cops Corner now, just a little left on the entry there for Jack Olaco. You can't quite take it flat out as the tyres overheat, but he keeps it steady, heading through Woodcote and now towards the latter part of the lap. Braking now into Luffield. You can see trying to V off that corner. You just avoid the curb on the inside, but bring it back as close as you can to it. Jack Olaco now heading through Brooklands, and the rear end gets away from him, and the Trident goes off into the grass, and that brings his competitive running in this qualifying session surely to a close. We will look towards the fight for pole as Hugo leads the way. He has a blistering time trial time around this circuit, I can tell you that for free, and so he's certainly got some very, very strong pace, and he leads the way from QVR Verstappen and championship leader Fortuna as they hit the line now, and it looks like Hugo's going to take it. Watch the clock here. Yes, he does. He takes it by a colossal margin. Look at that. 36.3 to 36.8 for championship contender QVR Verstappen in that second place. We will tidy up the rest of the results later on, of course, but there is no doubt about the pole position sitter. And of course, a man who hasn't quite been able to execute those one-shot sessions so far this season has got it absolutely right here. He takes away that provisional pole from QVR Verstappen, 136.3 for the pole setter. Then the two high-techs come next with Jordan DHL just getting the nod over Fortuna. Next comes Ghost and then Runes. Big gaps here in this very, very tricky circuit. Kevin and Koru come next. Rubialski and NMX James are at the top 10. Just behind that is Reshka Coatmaster, Rick and Jack Olaco. We saw with that spin, Canal Flow, JB, LB and Bacon Bear not getting times on the board. Yes, Kevin, Swedish domination. Of course, we've had a Swede dominating throughout this championship, but of course we've got two more Super Swedes joining the fun up at the front of the order. So with Fortuna, Hugo and Jordan DHL, you've got some absolute weapons up at the front of APPF2 Cup. We turn our attentions, though, very quickly to the sprint race just in front of us. And, of course, if you're not already familiar with the format, we have the top 10 flipped for this race, which will mean NMX James will start on that pole position with Rubialski, the F2 specialist, alongside him on that front row. Then the Tier 2 duo, elite, the duo extraordinaire of Koru and Kevin. Runzen goes behind that. And then it's I'll call them the big four of tonight in terms of raw pace, at least. Fortuna, Jordan, Verstappen, and Hugo. Coming from further back in the field, of course, watch for Fortuna, always so incredibly quick off the line in these cars. So incredibly strong in that, and that is how he's been able to muster up points in both the sprint and feature races night after night after night to get some very good point scoring results going. Hello to Lawrence in the chat as well. Good to have you guys alongside us for what is hopefully going to be yet another night, great night of racing. We've had some terrific stuff in essentially every single round of the F2 Cup, and of course a very healthy grid to look forward to in this race. So we're just gearing up for it now. Towards the first of the two races tonight, and this is going to be a very, very tricky one. That opening complex of Club and Vale is so deadly when you have a full pack of cars, and of course cars running with bad intentions, trying to get one over on each other is going to make things very tight and tricky down at those opening tight corners, and of course a tough braking zone. Especially when you're navigating it alongside other cars. Lockup's very easy to come by, so hopefully they get through cleanly, but they're going to have to look out for each other as we get set towards this sprint race with 5 red lights. And the sprint race is go with James leading away from the lane, and Rubialski trying to get to him as they careen towards turn 1. Rubialski gets onto the inside, a little bit of an Invicta, but James holds it round the outside and leads the way, and those cars running side by side predictably. Further down in the order and tagging there, you can see that's Koru and Runes coming together, and immediately his car's jumping Fortuna. I said how good this guy starts. He's already P4 just in front of Ghost and gapping most of his major rivals further down in the field, so blistering stuff from the championship leader, looking to try and make good on that. You're seeing Slipstream already being employed. Koru trying to get up and alongside Runes after being caught up with him at that start. Gonna get very close going into Chapel, and Runes a little bit off lane in that Campos, has to recover, but now Koru has Jordan DHL for company, and Hugo trying to get in on this as well, the pole setter for the feature race, getting tucked in underneath these two, but Jordan does go through on Koru. Hugo up behind him doesn't get the best run, and Verstappen is lining the pair of them up, looking towards that outside line, so contenders battling away at the lower end of the top 10. Hugo has found that inside line on Koru, and it looks as though he's going to go through. Verstappen tries to follow him through the space, not quite opening up against the AIX driver. Looks for the switchback as the rear end of Koru dances around in front of him in that very tricky traction zone of the exit of Brooklands. We head towards now this horrible braking zone going into the loop, and QBR Verstappen lines up the inside line. He's not going to get much room from Koru, and they do make a little bit of contact. Koru fending him off heading into Village, and he's going to be able to squeeze him out on the exit. So QBR Verstappen repelled and frustrated as most of his rivals having better fortunes at that start. It is though James, the pole setter for this sprint race, who does lead the way from the rest of the field as Hugo tries to put pressure on his compatriot Jordan DHL, and they were swapping places further back in the field as well. I think that was Rick and Copemasters Invicta swapping places as Rick tries to recover from a slightly subpar qualifying session. So as always, the slightly topsy-turvy grid we get in this sprint race is mixing things up in these early laps, but Fortuna has immediately put himself into contention up at the front. You have to say this guy has phenomenal race pace as well as quality pace, and he's making good use of it. Again, so quick off the line as always. Verstappen manages to eventually clear Koru as we do get contact between Jordan and Hugo. They managed to just about keep it in line, but that could have certainly ended up in tears for one or both of them. Then wide on the exit of Cops is Kevin, and that brings Fortuna up onto his outside line, and Ghost is trying to pick his own way through. He looks towards the inside line, nothing quite doing on the brakes. Fortuna's gone very deep on the brakes though, and that may open up an opportunity for Ghost to try and pounce. Fortuna manages to just fend him off. He tries to park the car on the apex through the exit, and that does lead to a little bit of oversteer for the championship leader, but he does manage to fend off, and he's still all over the back of Kevin. Can he get to the inside lane into the loop? Yes he can. Can he get it stopped? Yes he can. Can he convert the manoeuvre? Not quite. He's round! He's round! Oh my goodness me! Fortuna round! A shocker earlier on in the race. I'm not sure if he got contact from Ghost. He lit up the rears regardless, I'm pretty sure, and well, I was singing his praises all throughout, and that is pretty much the first sign of vulnerability I've seen from him all season long, and now he's got work to do. He's immediately trying to pounce on Koru, but Koru is not going to afford him any sort of space going into the first corner of the third lap. So a big blow then for Fortuna. He still of course has plenty of points to play with in the championship, but that's certainly not the start to his evening that he would have been looking for. You have to say that Ghost, the opportunities have been opened up for him, but overtaking proving to be pretty difficult as they all run in a DRS train. James has done a tremendous job of hanging on up at the front with such talent chasing him down all the way throughout this field. And that DRS train he's dragging along is making things hard to move up. Koru dropping it further down in the field though. He's had a disastrous start to this race, is immediately picked off by Reshka too, and dropping outside of the points into 14th position as the Campos cars swap places. Hugo going through on Runes. Jordan tried to follow through up around the outside. Runes of course, the teammate of Hugo, is not going to let that one go, and he's going to run it pretty deep. Jordan is forced to go the long way around. He stays alongside for Brooklands. His lane is is tight on the inside. He makes a bit of room almost with a little bit of contact between the two cars, and they are still side by side heading down towards the final stages of the lap. But Runes is going to find it difficult to fight on this outside line. He still tries to stick it through Aintree and braking very, very late going into the loop. There is oversteer from the high-tech, and he goes round again, and he collects QVR Verstappen. Oh my goodness me, the contenders are falling apart at that very part of the track. Drama here in the F2 Cup in this sprint race, and QVR Verstappen being caught, it has to be said, in Jordan DHL's moment, dropping outside of the points too, and maybe picking up his damage for his troubles. My goodness me, the door is wide open for drivers here. Look at this. They're all getting eager. Koru took a huge lunge at Reshka there. Didn't come off, and Jordan well managed to pick him off from there and try to get his recovery going. He doesn't seem to have visible damage on that high-tech, but certainly a blow to his race as he tried to push his way up. Runes, though, he kept on fighting on, and in the end, I don't think he did anything wrong there, and he was actually rewarded hanging on to that possession, and Denko making that known in the chat as well. Still a load of pressure that NMX James is absorbing up at the front, but you can see the dirty air having an effect on Rubialski there as he tried to get close, heading through Kopp's corner. That puts Kevin somewhat into range, but not a very long braking zone heading into Luffield, and he can't quite pull his way through on that occasion. Fortuna trying to get his own recovery drive kicked off. He's up behind Rick, who's stormed his way up the field, courtesy largely of some of those incidents, but he's having a very good time of it in the sprint race so far, darting to the inside to try and break the toe to the high-tech, chasing him down. Doesn't look like he's within range though on this occasion, heading into the loop. Bit of a lock-up from Rick, but he does manage to make the apex regardless. Of course, he doesn't have DRS to help defend, unfortunately for him. As Koru this time, I was going to say successfully getting past Reshka, but they're still going at it on exit then, and banging wheels all the way through the exit of that corner, heading into Abby still side by side. My goodness me, Koru's going to get forced onto the curb, nearly onto the grass by Reshka. He still fights on, but surely not around the outside. He's going to try into the contact, almost spearing Reshka around. LB up the inside, and that Rodin trying to get through on the Van Amersfoort car, runs onto the grass though, and he's going to lose out to Canal Flow, streaking around the outside in the dams to try and snatch out that 15th place. He does run it a little bit wide though, heading through Stowe, but does have the exit and does have the place. Of course, points down to 12th in this race, and those two final points being positions, to the surprise I'm sure of everyone, are being fought between Jordan DHL and QVR Verstappen, who of course had that tangle a couple of laps ago. Jordan getting through on that occasion, but both of them very far detached from the rest of the field. As LB going off, I know he's been looking to race for so long in this series this season, but not coming off for him at the moment, and he drops further down the field. So we get towards half distance in what has been a dramatic race so far, but no change for the lead. Again, James has done a marvellous job resisting the pressure, but look at the pressure he's under. Look at all those cars streaming through, and a 6-car scrap for the lead as we head towards the end of the 5th lap, and pressure is going to be on every single one of these drivers. Then James trying to fend him off. Kevin is trying to find his own opportunities on Rubialski, but does have Ghost for company. Hugo is still chasing on. Runes, I imagine, I think he did have a bit of a moment there heading through Village, but he's certainly got his own prospects, maybe as a rear gunner for the likes of Hugo to try and go after those 4 drivers just in front of him. So the man who started 10th on the grid, courtesy of course of getting that pole position for the feature race, trying to carve his way through, potentially seeking out a double. He is one of the rare drivers in the history of the F2 Cup who's managed to achieve that feat. He is still going to give chase, but it is still James who leads. He's made no mistake thus far, holding off Rubialski at the front, but the 6-car scrap is not going away anytime soon. Who knows how it's going to unfold. We approach half distance, still James leading the way. And very tough to carve out opportunities when you're sat in that DRS train. The more scattered field behind does open itself up to potential overtaking opportunities, which Fortuna, still continuing his comeback drive, is going to try and make use of, pouncing on the outside of Rick to going towards Luffield, and is simply going to breeze through. is wise to a potential lunge from the Dutchman and covers off the inside line. So the high-tech moves up into 7th possession and will try his level best to chase down the train in front of him. That's certainly not going to be an easy task, but of course he is doing all he can to work himself back into this race, and Rick and Copemaster, who have been virtually inseparable throughout this race, may yet go at it. Up in front, Ghost looking at Kevin. Kevin had a little look to the inside of Rubialski, but he managed to compromise his own run. And that sets Ghost all over the back of it, but Hugo is right there as well. Look at this, he can throw a blanket over them. There's almost no way of going for a move from distance into here. Hugo still feigning to the inside if he'll hope that the gap will open up, and he can send it, and that's exactly what he's going to try. It's a bold move for the defending champion, and he and Ghost go side by side. There is wheel rubbing, and the Campos car is forced up onto the outside. Ghost was not letting that one go easily as Hugo tried a very opportunistic move, but that is the chances he is willing to take. He still sees that race victory not far up the road, and cars that he is going to look to try and scythe his way through in this enthralling battle up at the front. Look at Rubialski, how close he's able to run. He's had to absorb a lot of pressure from the likes of Kevin, and I think that's hindered his chances of going after James the way he wants to. He does have several sprint race wins in the F2 Cup in the history of the event. He's still going at it as Koro has dropped it yet again, having a nightmare race in his AIX car as the leading group heads themselves towards Luffield. Hugo has managed to regroup and trying to have his own look at Ghost as penalties begin to get picked up just outside of the points at the moment, so not having any impact at the moment of where the points are going to be dished out, but it does show that there is a danger of that at this track. It's not a prime penalty gathering track, but it's certainly a possibility. Lock up from Ghost does miss the apex a little bit. Hugo just searching for that outside. Can he find a switchback heading out of Village? His rear tyres answer back with a firm no, and he has to drop back, but we saw at the beginning of the lap how little of an opportunity he is going to try and how he will pounce on and try and carve up a huge opportunity. Look at the way Fortuna is closing in on these guys, though. He's not out of it yet as Jordan picks up a penalty. He's actually out of range of the drivers behind him, and I think the damage shot QVR Verstappen can't quite match his pace, so that does leave Jordan open up in front, although he's just gone off over the Vale complex and actually picks up another tiny penalty for his troubles, and that's not going to do him any good at all. Still, this battle rages on, but overtaking proving so difficult. Hugo, I mean, you can see the quality of the lanes he's taking as Runes picks up a time penalty. That's immediately going to lose him out to Fortuna and Rick, and potentially Copemaster as well. It's going to be very close between those guys. I think Copemaster himself actually will still just be within that range as Ghost is way out of Cop's corner. Is this the opportunity that Hugo's been looking for? They're side by side up the road as well. Kevin tried to at last make his way through on Rubialski, and he may just well do it. Rubialski cannot find his way around the long way around, and Kevin has been rewarded for his persistence, getting the move done on the Invicta car. Rubialski is still tucked into the slipstream though, still fighting on to try and reclaim that second position. His best chance maybe right here heading into the loop. Is he going to go from distance? He doesn't quite have enough as Runes and Fortuna up the inside and carving up that sixth position. What a drive this would be. He's put himself right back in contention here. What could have been without that spin, you have to wonder, but he's certainly fighting the good fight and certainly cutting his losses in the championship too. Hugo, he has now got his way past the tall target of Ghost. Now he's got to try and line up the next car in front of him of Rubialski, having just lost out on that second place. He may seem vulnerable, but we've got just over 2 laps to go, and still James in this ART is holding firm up at the front. What a drive this would be if you can see it through, but he still has the superstars charging after him. Look at Hugo looking left and right, any which way through he can try and find on Rubialski as they head into Chapel Corner. Can't quite go from distance. It's not much of a braking zone into that part of the track, but we know the speed he has. He still has the persistent Ghost up behind him, and I'm sure he will look for any which way he can past the Super Swede. as they run so close for that third place. And actually Hugo, a little bit of dirty air I think hampering him heading through Copse, and he's going to have to turn offense into defence as a Ghost lining up the outside line. He's going to try and switch to the inside, can't quite find it. Hugo placing his car superbly to see off that threat, but it still laid him in his assault of the race leaders, and that is exactly what James will need. He was able to resist Rubialski without too much problem. Kevin, of course, a new challenger in that second place, but thus far he hasn't quite been able to find an easy opportunity to work his way through, and James has made no mistake up at the front of this field to this point, still leading the way, just over 2 laps to go. More and more drivers are drawing nearer. Both Rick and Copemaster are getting in towards the action as well. We're going to have a phenomenal 9-way fight up at the front as we get towards the end of this race, but still the same race leader that we've had since the very, very start of the evening. Again, what a drive this would be from Kevin as Copemaster picks up a penalty, and he's got Jackalaco right on the edge of his 3-second range, so that can be very, very crucial and potentially costly indeed. It doesn't seem at the moment as if Kevin has the speed at this stage. He isn't able to provide much more threat than Rubialski was, although he does get a very, very aggressive looking entry heading into Chapel Corner, and I'm sure he is not going to give it up any kind of opportunity he can get up, he can take, as Fortuna was getting very close to the back of Ghost, but I saw grass on those tyres. I think in the end, just having his run compromised that little bit. Kevin with DRS is right on James here, and maybe the race lead for the first time is threatened. Kevin coming around the outside, can he get it done on the brakes? He's very, very brave. He takes a very long way around, and James with that tighter line is able to fend off. Again, exemplary driving under pressure here from the Irishman, but that is the first time his race lead has come under real threat out on the track. Will it be the last assault of Kevin to try and snatch up that race win? He's getting oh so close. We do see drivers making errors further back. Ghost was a little bit wide heading through Village. He's still having to try and keep the championship leader at bay as we head towards the final lap, and this race so finely poised up at the front. Even Rick has managed to get himself within DRS range. It's a phenomenal fight up at the front. Can Hugo finally get himself up onto the podium? Can't quite find a way through. The same move that he tried on Ghost a few laps ago. Now Kevin, we saw he had such a good run through the Chapel Maggots Beckett's complex on the last lap and stayed close through Copse. That was how he was able to challenge James. He's not near enough on this straight, I don't think, so can he replicate that same run and have another go heading into Luffield? Here we go on this final lap. Again, he's much stronger on the entry than James. He's got to try and stay close here, but this is where Dirty Air is going to work against him. He's able to stay with him in these flat-out corners, but this one, Copse Corner, that's the real test. They fly it in there, and there's the understeer for the Dutchman. Wide he goes, and that gives James potentially the buffer that he needs, trying to dart away late up the road. Ghost getting very close to the back of Hugo. He can't quite get through. Overtaking has proven to be near impossible up at the front, but not least for the cars who have tried to challenge NMX James. And again, I have to reiterate, what a drive this has been if he can just see it through. Of course, he only had to really defend his lead once, but look at the cars stacking up behind him, and he has just kept his cool under immense pressure, pressured by some of the best drivers this league has ever seen. And NMX James just has to get through the flat-out King of Abbey to bring home a sensational sprint race win. James wins it from Kevin. Rubialski just fends off Hugo over the line for third. Ghost comes next in fifth. Fortuna will be ruining what could have been in sixth. Rick in seventh, a great recovery drive from him, then Runes, penalty costing him dearly in eighth from Copemaster. He just manages to fend off Jackalaco with his own penalty. Jordan in 11th. He will be bemoaning that as well on I have to say, a bit of a dire race for High Tech. Reshka is next. The final points being possession just ahead of LB. Then we'll have Canalflo, QVR, Verstappen, a race to forget for him. Then JB, Bacon Bear, and Koru managing to see it off the race. Again, also a race to forget for him, but he will have another chance in the feature race. And yes, Lawrence, what a drive that was from James. I'm certainly not sure if I had the the metal to to uh, to fend off with that kind of pressure. Of course, again, overtaking was very, very difficult. But of course, the cars behind him had DRS every single lap, and yet they were able to fend off. Just seeing there, um, Ghost apologising to Fortuna there about contact at the loop, and I'm not sure if that's what we saw with the spin. So unfortunate for the championship leaders, James in the chat. I won't repeat that, but I think that's pretty apt for the drive. Absolutely incredible stuff out there, fending off all that pressure ahead of Kevin and Rubialski, managing to round off that podium there in that third place, and Hugo fourth from 10th on the grid. Not to be for the double, but he's going to have a very good chance of feature race glory in a few minutes' time. Ghost in 5th, Fortuna 6th. Rick then in 7th, again a great recovery drive from him. Then Runes, Copemaster, Jackalaka round out the top 10, and Jordan and Resh can round out the points paying positions. JB, Canal Flow, Verstappen, JB, Bacon Bear, Koru. That is your result for the first race of the evening, and what a stormer it was. We are just going to look forward now to the feature race, and of course we'll see what the strategies are going to be like in this one. The dreadful pit entry, that downhill run, which catches many a driver out, and some drivers actually not getting punished for the game when they really should. I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, we've got a cracking prospect in store for us. I believe it's a 2 compound gap between the tyre sets at this track, so that's going to add a new dynamic into the race. We've seen the exchange of strategies between starting on the softer tyre and starting on the harder tyre, and how that's gone back and forth throughout this championship. So that's going to be another great thing to watch. This feature race, none of the races in F2 disappoint, and we're going to look forward for one more in a few minutes' time. Say a few minutes time. Hopefully it is a little bit sooner than that. I know some of the drivers with the new no readying up rule for 60 seconds can get a bit hesitant with that. That certainly happened on in Tier 1 on Friday. But yeah, it's gonna be another cracker, of course. Now we saw, of course, many of this championship's premier drivers having their own issues in that sprint race, and of course that is what the sprint race format can throw up. On this occasion, of course, they all start up at the front. Those kind of big four from qualifying. So they'll have less drivers in the way, and more opportunities to fight it out for themselves. And again, we'll see what the tyre choices are going to be. But yeah, it's going to be a very different prospect, I'm sure, from what we've just witnessed. But we'll wait to get that one underway. Also, it must be mentioned, despite the fact that Fortuna had obviously had that moment earlier on in the sprint race, because QVR Verstappen got caught up in that incident with Jordan, had his own front wing damage. Who am I's not here actually means his championship lead is even more commanding after that race. I do believe, and I may have to double check this. I do believe QVR Verstappen, his nearest rival really in this championship, does start ahead of him on the grid for this second of two races tonight. So that will be something, at least for QVR Verstappen, to take forward. Of course, he will be disappointed with the sprint race, but he is in a prime position to try and challenge Hugo. Of course, based on the gap that Hugo had on everyone else in qualifying, again, he is the second fastest driver in the world in time trial around this track, just a couple of places ahead of yours truly. But yeah, he has blistering speed. Well, he has blistering speed anyway, but he's especially proficient at these reverse tracks, and he's starting from pole position here as we gear up towards the feature race with 5 red lights. And the feature race in reverse Silverstone is going. Hugo leads them away off the lane on the hard tyres, immediately under pressure from QVR Verstappen, who mounts the curb on the inside and has Fortuna on his outside, but can't quite find a way through. Can the championship leader on the soft tyre? He is going to be eager for a hot start. Ruby Halski has certainly achieved that up in the 4th place. What a blistering start. He's made up 5 positions. Extraordinary stuff from the Evicta car. He's got himself right in the game in the early phases of this race. That is what the soft tyres are for Fortuna. The typically fast starting high-tech car was able to make some use of that to get in front of his teammate Jordan, who didn't get off the line so well, down in the 5th place, the 3rd highest hard tyre runner. But yeah, he's certainly made a good start trying to challenge QVR Verstappen and make early use of those softs. Hugo does lead the way though as they head out of Copse for the first time. From Verstappen tucking into that slipstream. Movers and shakers further down the field. Reshka and Rick side by side. Rick making another very good start. Also on those soft tyres. Plenty of grip to use for him. And he's through on the inside lane. Takes a hold of that 10th place. So good early movement from Rick as Fortuna trying to carve his way through immediately. He is side by side with the man in second in the championship and does go through. So through to 2nd place goes Fortuna, and he'll eagerly be trying to carve up that lead as well. The rear end gets away from him though, and the rear end goes completely away from QVR Verstappen, lighting up the rears, and for the 2nd time this evening finds himself off the road at the loop. And I have to say, on that occasion, that was just all his own doing, and dropping down the field to 14th position, and his championship chances take yet another blow here at Silverstone Reverse. It's really been a torrid evening for him so far, as Runes and Ghost side by side, and the Van Amersfoort car getting 2 bites of oversteer, heading through the entry and the exit of the Vale corner, and Kevin watching on behind trying to make his own way through. James, the sprint race winner, is battling away with Rick, who's finding his way around the outside. Plenty of grip on those soft tyres. They bang wheels just a little bit down the hangar straight, but it looks as though Rick is going to get through up yet another possession. That's 5 in the early stages of this race for the 4-time champion, continuing to go up and on the move, making a very encouraging start to this 2nd race. But Hugo does lead, and of course he's managed to preserve his early advantage despite being on the hard tyres. Fortuna chasing him down on those softs, still has plenty of grip in hand. We know how good his race pace is, but he's going to have tough work ahead of him, I think, to beat Hugo, who is just so incredibly fast around this racetrack. And now with clean air, he has all the opportunity to make full use of it, trying to stretch away up and up the road as a QVR Verstappen gets through on JB. But he's got so much to do in the early stages of this race. Maybe he'll try and pull the pin early for a pit stop. Maybe not the optimal strategy in terms of pace, but trying to get himself out of the fight as there's contact. Kevin just tagging the back of Ghost, and Rick and James, who are still battling, will require no second invitation and will go straight through. So Kevin frustrated early on in the race after narrowly missing out on the win in the sprint race earlier on. He sits down in 9th place for the time being. Fastest lap Fortuna homing on Hugo, but how long is that tyre advantage going to last for the high-tech? The soft tyres, not horrifically unrobust, certainly at this track. We've seen them worse, I think, in the early stages of races. But can he get past Hugo before these tyres expire and Hugo starts to turn the tables on his hards? He is closing, but I'm not certain he's got enough of a pace overlap to really get that move done. And if Hugo can cut out the mistakes from his driver, rely on the dirty air that he's throwing back into his nearest rival's face, he can hang on to this lead virtually indefinitely, and it's going to get easier as the laps go on. If he can just survive this one, he's in with a great chance. Kevin losing more places further down the order. I think he must have had a moment at the Maggots Beckett's complex, and you could see the MP Motorsport car understeering in that dirty air. He doesn't have visible damage, but as you run so close behind the car in front of you, your run can be compromised. It really is. I mean, you have to experience it. It is a pain to follow another car at this circuit at close distance. And Kevin, after a terrific run in the last race we had, not having a good time of it in this one. early on. You can see this tyre dynamic switching as Jordan nearly into the back of Rubialski. Well, that certainly shows the kind of grip that he has to work with. Rubialski not quite able to match the speed of the front runners, but I do think that that tyre overlap is already starting to occur, and what better evidence is that? Hugo, fastest lap of the race. Fortuna now having to work to stay within that DRS range, and there's tip-top battle up at the front, but now the tables are turning, and Fortuna may have to yield that DRS. He was potentially just outside the range, and I think he was. There is an oversteer moment for Hugo, but he has it, the least briefly, been able to gap Fortuna out of DRS. That's going to make his task up at the front that little bit easier. DRS is certainly going to be in effect for those third downwards, chasing down the ailing Rubialski. Soft tyres are beginning to fade, and now the hard tyre runners, after losing out at the start, are roaring back at them, and that is what Rubialski is going to have to deal with in these next few laps. Jordan DHL, of course, such an aggressive, hard-charging driver, always willing to send a move, is right up behind him. You can see the extra grip he has at his disposal, and he's got the slipstream heading on the Invicta car towards Luffield. He's laning him up on that outside lane. Can he get it done? Rubialski is late on the brakes, runs a little bit deep, and contact tags the high-tech, and he did have a touch from behind him. Not sure if that was from Runes or from Ghost, as Jordan gets caught on the side pod of Ghost. Now has Runes on his outside. Rick trying to pick up the slipstream. Runes getting squeezed right to the edge of the track by the high-tech man, and I'm not sure if he managed to get away with that without damage. Runes, though, you can see it, and off the road he goes. The end plate already sending him off, and Runes, well, you have to say that's desperately unlucky for the man from down under. But he gathers up that Campos car out of the train and is severely compromised in his charge in this feature race. Bitterly disappointing for Runes. His teammates having better fortunes, though. Hugo leads and leads comfortably up at the front. Campos, they ceded too many points early in the season to really be constructors contenders, but what a team they proved to be, and what a driver Hugo is, stretching away up at the front. Behind, we're seeing swaps in possession. QVR Verstappen on his own recovery trail gets to the inside of Kevin. He's going to pay for that a little bit on exit, but it looks as though he's going to hold fast in that 11th place. Still points on offer, of course. All of them count. Up in front, Reshka trying to resist Copemaster, of course. These guys somewhat more detached from the train in front, largely in part due to that incident. Of course, Rudes with that wing damage being a bit of a bottleneck for this train, which stretches down to Koru, to the JB, sorry, actually, in 14th place at the moment. Here goes Ghost with DRS sweeping around the outside of Rubialski. Is Rubialski going to fight this one again? He tries to stay in it, and the rear end of Ghost's car does step out a little bit. Rubialski tags Ghost just a little bit, and he did get unsettled at the Van Amersfoort driver, but he does get into third place. Jordan tries to follow him through, but can't quite manage it. He has to continue to chase, try and get himself into that P4 as they head into the loop. He's got plenty more grip at his disposal, but can't quite find the move. He still has Rick with him, who's done a good job on those soft tyres. I thought he ran into the back of the Invicta car, but I think a bit of camera trickery not quite doing there. Fortuna N, does he get it stopped for the pit lane? He does comfortably then. He knows the danger of that downhill, and the soft tyres already fading means pit stops are coming through. Fortuna and Rubialski both come in. Rick, who's done a good job on those tyres, certainly stays out. He does have pressure from James on the inside of the first corner. Bit of contact to the rear end of his Prema too. He's hanging on for the time being, but it's a bit of an irritation he didn't want, and he's lost DRS to Jordan DHL as a result of it. So hard luck for Rick in this mid phase of the race. I'd expect pit stop to come for him at the end of this lap, but until then he's going to try and resist the sprint race winner at the moment. James on for another good result here, but he's got a long way to go fighting on in that 5th position. Kevin and Copemaster side by side. The Invicta car, though, without room to operate on that long way round, and Kevin managing to see him off. He's still charging at him, his Copemaster, but can't quite find a way through for the time being, and these guys still being held back by Runes. His pace isn't disastrous, I have to say, but that front wing damage is definitely ailing him. QVR Verstappen looking for another one as he challenges Reshka into Woodco, and he's got the bare minimum of space, and they do touch, and Reshka spears off the road and out of the race. Reshka's out of the race, and I'm waiting for a potential safety car, but it doesn't seem to come, and that's bitter disappointment for Reshka, but he did take the risk of squeezing QVR Verstappen. He may feel, of course, that the ART car shouldn't have been there in the first place, but that's a high-profile incident for these guys. Of course, Rick, I'm sure, would have been desperate for a safety car to be called, but it wasn't to be, as Rune's now on the defensive of QVR Verstappen. They hit the line. Rick is going to come in at the end of this one. Is he going to get it stopped? Yes, he does. I always wins when cars barrel towards that pit entry. So Rick is in. That brings an end to the soft starters, and we wait for the hard starters to follow suit in the next few laps. I'd expect the first pit stops to be coming around about lap 9, maybe lap 8 at the absolute earliest. I don't think it's time for that just yet. Of course, we'll see what Fortuna with clean air is able to do. Can he grab an undercut on Hugo and try and apply some of that pressure? Of course, when Hugo gets fresh softs on, it's going to be tough to hold him back. If that is the case, QVR Verstappen draws alongside Runes, heading towards Chapel, and I don't think Runes has got much weaponry to fight him off. And QVR Verstappen does indeed lap up that 5th position and tries to mount his own challenge towards his teammate. So of course it is good point scoring for ART tonight, regardless of the poor night that QVR Verstappen has had for himself. As you can see the understeer from Rune suffering. Kevin goes straight through, and Coatmaster trying to follow suit. He may have picked up a warning though on the inside of Woodcote. He's still getting a battle on, but Rune's late on the brakes. But that Campos car just does not rotate the way he wanted to. He tries to stay in it at Brooklands and does make contact with the Dutchman on his outside. He manages to hang on to it. That was certainly though a heart and mouth moment for Runes. He resets, but again that front wing damage is ailing him. But Coatmaster, the man in front of him, gets a penalty for his troubles. Not good news for him at all. It doesn't look as though we're going to get an abundance of pit stops on lap 8. I certainly thought that this was, or lap 7 even, I certainly thought that would be very early. But Kevin is going to come in, getting that MP car, firmly stopped. That is very, very early on indeed, and going to be a hard stint on those softs. We'll see how much he concedes to some of the soft starters, but additionally how much he can gain on the hard starters who are electing to pit a little bit earlier. Maybe some of these guys are going to follow suit on the next lap. I did think lap 9 was really the target lap, but certainly lap 8 also an option. Jordan DHL homing in on Ghost, and no love lost between these two. They look to do battle once again out there on the track, and they've gone back and forth in several of the feature races throughout this season. Hugo leads by a monstrous margin again. The only real challenge does seem to be for Fortuna, but I think even he is going to really struggle to make an impression on the race leader. The Swedes are battling out up at the front, but I do think it's the Campos driver who holds the advantage in this one. As we head towards half distance here in the feature race, still Jordan DHL chasing down Ghost. Will he try and pull an undercut on him? Ghost hanging on to that second place for all his worth. Are we going to see pit stops though? Here's Hugo running on his own, trying to tap out his rhythm. Of course, he will be aware of the potential undercut threat from Fortuna, but I have to say I haven't seen fastest laps being set by the championship leader as I expected. That Hugo is not panicking at that threat. He stays out yet another lap. Again, he's going for that target lap I mentioned, I think, of lap 9. Both Ghost and Jordan also follow suit. One of the ARTs may feel the need to come in, although actually neither of them do. James stays out yet another lap, and QVR Verstappen goes with him, so it's really Kevin who's going off strategy here. Coatmaster does come in, but he does fall foul again to that pit lane, as does Koru. I said it's dangerous, and that's caught out 2 of the drivers out there, and that's going to surely spell an end to any major points paying contention. Bacon Bear as well picking up a 10-second penalty coming in. It's such a tough pit entry, and if you do run the racing lane, it's very deceptive to your stopping distance. So 3 drivers in quick succession picking up that speeding penalty. And that's going to be the concern for more of these drivers as they line up their pit stops. You can see where Kevin re-emerges. He's going to be comfortably in front of Koru, so he has got plenty going for him at this stage. You can see where the likes of Jack Olaco and Rick came in off their own strategies. Kevin is nearly side by side with, I think that's Coatmaster actually, who appears to be a lap down now re-emerging from there. actually not entirely sure where he is. He doesn't seem to be very much in sync with the rest, but currently, oh, there he does. He does manage to reappear on our graphics. Now in 12th position now, so he did lose out to Kevin on that pit exit. And we saw him going off, heading through Stowe Corner. And Jordan's had an off on this lap, sitting 3 seconds behind Ghost, so not exactly sure what's happened to him on this lap. Was there an encounter between the two of them, or did he just drop it on his own? He's got James with him as Hugo does come in on lap 9, as does Ghost, who gets it stopped a bit less comfortably than his rivals. Jordan comes in as well. NMX James stays out. QVR Verstappen, his teammate, does duly come in, so soft tyres go on for Hugo. How effective is that hard tyre undercut? We're going to see Fortuna trying to charge at him. If Hugo comes out of the pits in front, that is surely game over. He, of course, loses out in the short term to James and Runes. Fortuna is trying to come at him, but I dare I say it, with Hugo already heading towards that pit exit lane, it's going to be very difficult for Fortuna to overhaul him. Look at that. That undercut just not proving effective at all, and I have to say that is purely just blistering speed from Hugo. He comfortably clears the championship leader, and dare I say it's going to be very, very difficult to reel him in the closing laps. Ghost comes out, managing to just snag Rubialski on pit exit, or does he? They're side by side through Stowe, and he was pinched on the inside, was a Fan Amersfoort driver. He does get DRS though, going towards Chapel. Rubialski's not out of the woods just yet, not by a long shot. Ghost is coming at him, but he closed his DRS later on the straight, and I think he's exercising a lot of patience here. He does have a really good podium opportunity, does Ghost, and he continues his own offensive for that 5th place on the road, but would become 3rd with James and Runes coming into the pits. Surely at the end of this lap you don't want to run so unevenly and only leave yourself 4 laps on the soft tyres. Ghost now towards Rubialski, but I didn't expect him to go from distance there. He is going to wait for a more opportune moment. It's a huge gap to Fortuna up in that 4th place, and maybe he feels there is a chance, but of course we've seen how quickly those soft tyres do go off and do degrade, and their advantage wither away. But he's certainly, Rubialski certainly at the mercy of Ghost, though, further behind him, as our top 2 do predictably come in to pit lane. So that will hand the lead over to Hugo, and dare I say, a lead he's very unlikely to relinquish. Look at the grip that Ghost has, though, heading out of Village. He's almost looking towards the inside lane of Abbey. It would have been, I think, a bit foolhardy to stay in it, though, and he does indeed back off for the time being, reset and look to go again. They head towards Club Corner, and Rubialski under heavy pressure here, trying to resist it. Of course, he's on for another great haul of points here after strong results in both the feature and sprint races, but he is still fighting on. He does have Jordan as well chasing on for that podium, so it's going to be very difficult for him to resist the high-tech car as well. Ghost coming at Rubialski yet again towards the outside lane, and the Chapel, he's going to go for it this time. Rubialski stays in it, but Ghost sweeps all the way around the outside, and there is nothing the Invicta man can do to fend him off, unless he can grab a bit of that DRS heading towards Cops Corner. You fear he's got to try and get Ghost to cover the inside, and he does so maybe he can try and carve out an opportunity, but there's the lack of grip, and in the end he can't quite fight on. His core out of the race, heading out of Maggots. Are we going to see it? We do have a full course yellow. It is a virtual safety car though, so with everyone having pit merely just a little pause in the action, it does seem to be a bit disappointed for Koru in what has been a nightmare evening for him. He did actually come into this round 6th in the championship, but not to be for him tonight, and he is going to sabotage quite a few points, and runs out of the session. So points on offer, but for all but the lowest finisher at the moment, with 16 drivers left in the race. We gear up towards the final laps of the event. Hugo leads comfortably from Fortuna. Ghost getting in front of Rubialski is a key for multiple reasons, and not least because it gives him a buffer to what I imagine is his main threat in Jordan DHL, who has to wait that little bit longer behind that VSC to try and carve his own way through. So we'll wait for it to go green. This podium fight looks like the main attraction, and it is now back underway, with Ghost lighting up his rears a little bit on entry for Vale, but he's able to get that traction down and immediately extend his lead over Rubialski. Softer tyres, fresher tyres, faster tyres. He has third place in hand. Jordan DHL will try and come at him, but Rubialski has the DRS to try and fend him off. Strong slipstream for Jordan DHL. Surely he doesn't go for it into Chapel. He is going to line him up though. Is he going to go for it? Rubialski carries in a lot of entry speed and fends him off for the time being, but that is just one offensive. He's parried. There are still more to come in this fourth place battle with just under 4 laps to go. Rubialski on those older hard tyres, absorbing all the pressure. Jordan DHL having to deal with that dirty air though, heading through Copse is going to delay him just that little bit. And it's certainly a big dive from distance here to Luffield, so Rubialski fends off for the time being, but it's through these corners where Ghost is going to be able to get that separation on him, as Canalfla picks up a time penalty. It has Runes well within his range with a additional penalty coming as well for the pit entry. Runes looks pretty much set to grab those points and does actually go through on the road anyway. Still keeping an eye though on this third place battle. Rubialski struggling to get the car stopped, heading into the loop, that horrible braking zone. You have to brake while turning all the way through. It's so hard to get the car stopped, pitched and turned in. And unfortunately, that has proven to be the case for Rubialski. He's out of DRS and Jordan is all over him, trying to make his way through. Can he get it done? But you can see the extra grip he has. Of course, the soft tyres, they don't last very long, but he's certainly afforded an advantage in terms of raw mechanical grip over the Invicta in front of him. Jordan DHL, can he get through? That entry into Stowe isn't going to help him much, but that exit is much more appealing. And now he has the DRS. Rubialski, he managed to fend him off once into Chapel. This one's going to be tougher. Jordan DHL around the outside. Can he get it done this time? Rubialski tries to hang on, but there is nothing he can do against such a disadvantage in grip. Jordan is through into fourth place. QVR Verstappen, after a tremendous recovery after the spin, was the next driver to try and chase down Rubialski, but now that tyre age on the soft tyres begins to come into it. Look at this lead of Hugo though, he looks virtually untouchable in this race. He has proven his worth around this reverse circuit as a Copemaster has gone off, heading out of Copse, and he's going to drop several places. I'm not sure, I think he just has a track limits penalty. I don't believe it's a... no, it does. It is actually additionally a pit lane speeding penalty. He's a Copemaster, really badly beset in this race as Runes manages to pick his way past LB. He does have a fresh front wing on that car, and he's going to put it to good effect as Hugo grabs the fastest lap of the race, drawing further and further clear, 8 seconds ahead of the championship leader with just 2 laps to go. It seems to be all safe and sound up at the front. And Ghost trying to hold off Jordan in that third place fight for what would be a very commendable evening of racing for him. He still has to battle on and see off that third place. Verstappen too is coming back towards Rubialski. Rubialski just barely hanging on to DRS on this lap, but it's going to be a tougher fight as we head towards the next lap of affairs. James has leaked quite a lot of time in the last couple of laps, and he does have damage on that ART. I was wondering why his pace dropped off quite so much. He's looking to the inside as Kevin, and he does have so much more at his disposal than the man in front of him. Despite the older tyres, Kevin's got plenty of time to get this move done for 8th place and finally get through on the ART car, which has tormented him all throughout this evening. Just over a lap to go. Jordan is catching Ghost. He is going to be a threat going into that final lap. Rubialski trying to resist QVR Verstappen. Kevin at last has James in his rearview mirrors, or does he? James is going to fight on around the outside, but the front wing damage betrays him and he just cannot hold it that long way around. And so he has to tuck back into that 9th place and is going to find it very difficult, I think, to overhaul Kevin, despite his tyre age advantage. Hugo breaks the beam for the final lap, and he just has to bring that car home. Fortuna will take a useful haul of points, but not to be for him in this race, just outpaced by his compatriot on this occasion. This fight for the podium, though, is certainly up for grabs as Jordan DHL tries to snatch a last gasp podium, but he runs off the road at Vale, brings it back into line, but clobbers the curb, and that's going to delay his charge that little bit, and maybe that was all Ghost needed. If he can just keep it between the lines, it seems difficult to imagine that Jordan DHL can reel him in on this final lap. So, Hugo, clear. Fortuna managing to fend off for that second place. Jordan and Ghost were reeling him in, but ultimately not quite quick enough. In these last few laps, Rubialski, heavy pressure from QVR Verstappen. That's going to be a do-or-die battle for the 5th place. So here we go. For 3rd position, and can Jordan make a way through? He's still at quite a big distance. Can he get a better run heading through Copse? He does go through slightly quicker than Ghost, but he surely has too much ground to make up. QVR Verstappen, I think, had that similar dirty air effect heading through Copse, and he is still at a distance to Rubialski, who may just about be able to fend off for that 5th position. But we have to cut in front to the race lead because it has been an imperious drive from Hugo. The expectations were sky high going into this race for the reigning champion, and he has made good on his promise. Hugo comes around the last corner and takes the feature race win here at Silverstone, and at last he's banished his demons of this season. Fortuna comes through in a comfortable 2nd place, and Ghost will manage to fend off Jordan over the line for the podium. Jordan exercising his frustration as he comes over the line. Rubialski, a tenacious drive for 5th ahead of QVR Verstappen 6th. Again, he'll be bemoaning that spin. Rick in at 7th comes next, then Kevin, and then James, whose front wing damage in that race has made my decision for driver of the day rather difficult. Jackalacco comes next, then Runes. Again, front wing damage curtailing his efforts. LB just fends off JB over the line, and then the 2 Dams cars of Canalflow and Bacon Bear will round out our race. So we'll tidy up, of course, some of the results later on. Runes is, I think, just left the session just after the race in DNF glitch, so that's going to be a bit of pain for him. Well, just to tidy up in terms of the RLT after the race, but Runes will have a better classification than what it seems to be. Same with JB, who's also retired from this race, and a great battle between him and LB, which sadly was largely missed by my stream. Everyone DNFing from this race after the lane is proving to be a bit of an irritation, so we'll tidy up everything, but yeah, what a tremendous drive from Hugo up at the front. From Fortuna 2nd. Again, he's not the greatest of nights from Fortuna, but he continues to consolidate his championship lead, and with 4 rounds to go, is going to find himself, I imagine, very difficult to stop. Hopefully I'm able to bring up the results, because we currently are experiencing a black screen. I'll look back to the stream to try and pull whatever I can back. Of course, it was Hugo who took the win from Fortuna. Next came Ghost. Oh, we do actually have... Can I get it up? Maybe I'll just be able to run through quickly. Yeah, so Hugo wins it from Fortuna, then Ghost, Jordan, Rubialski, Verstappen. 2 Dutchmen come next of Rick and Kevin, then James and Jackalacco round out the top 10. LB is next, then, well, actually, this is where things get a bit confusing with some of the post-race retirements. Runes came in just behind Jackalacco, then it was LB, and then JB. I actually do have the gaps here. So, yeah, LB was just in front of JB, and then it was indeed Canalflow and then Bacon Bear. So those are your results, and for definite I can say Copemaster, Koru and Reshka were unable to see out the checkered flag. That brings the night though to a close, and a spectacular night of racing it was. Now of course there is the question of driver of the day, and I'm waiting to see actually what actually happened on the VSC restart. James saying that he hit the back of Rick on the VSC restart, which which unfortunately curtailed the end of his race. Bitterly disappointing because he has had such a good night. I'm sorry, I've barely been able to get my words out later on in this stream. So may have been a game bug, I'm not sure. And the reason I'm saying this is because I really want to give him Driver of the Day for what he did in that sprint race, which was really a turn up for the books. It's also very difficult to argue with Hugo for just incredible raw speed out there on the track, and not much more he could have gotten out of tonight. So it's a bit of a hard dilemma. And I think the only way I can separate it is pretty much just by expectations. The fact that Hugo essentially did what he was meant to do throughout the race. James, I would like to think that you're not tampering with my emotions, but I do think you are. That sprint race drive was just phenomenal. So yeah, I will give you the nod for Driver of the Day. Congrats again. That sprint race drive was just epic. Hi to Kevin as well. Fun race. Yeah, you had some great battles throughout there as well. We had a great time of it throughout tonight, and yeah, nearly, of course, grabbing the win in the sprint race. But yeah, I think that's just about going to do it for tonight. Another great night of racing here in the F2 Cup. It has been a tremendous championship to behold throughout this season. And next time out, we will head to the Marina Bay Circuit in Singapore, a track which is divisive in real life and amongst many of the drivers, but I have to say it is a track that produces such great racing, in league racing especially. So that is what we're going to have to do, but yeah, I think that is just about going to be it. So obviously tune in for the next week of racing, which will all come from the Marina Bay Circuit in Singapore, of course, not least with tomorrow's action in Tier 3 with Lawrence and maybe Kevin as well. Of course, next up on Tuesday night, you're going to have Tier 2 with myself and Ghost, Tier 1 on Friday the 7th with Sumo, and then with yours truly for the F2 Cup and Round 7. That is what's to come in the near future of the APPF1 League. But for myself, Daka, it is goodbye for now, and until next time, we'll see you later.